This is Carl Sahlberg with Creative Reproductions to Scale, and we've got another video tutorial to show you today. I want to introduce you to the 1/8" ribbon that we sell, and it is unique to CR2S. I use it a lot for indirect lighting of the dollhouses. The work that I do at the Carmel Museum in Carmel, Indiana, almost all of the houses that I've worked on for them, I have the LEDs in the front lip of the top section of each room so that it illuminates the entire room of the dollhouse, and it really makes a difference in the overall appearance of each of the rooms. Another thing that I like to do, though, is when I wire an individual's dollhouse, is I like to put the ribbon into the dollhouse, but I put it on a separate switch so that you can always turn off the LEDs and use the incandescent bulbs for the lighting in the dollhouse to show what it would look like in an application for the ambiance, I guess, of the incandescent lights. And then if you want to really show the detail of all of the furnishings that you have in each room, you can turn on the individual LEDs. This is the smallest ribbon of LEDs that I know that it's made. It's actually just under 1/8 of an inch wide, and you have two LEDs, and that's a limit resistor that's in the center there, but you have two LEDs per inch. So if we have a 1-inch strip between the copper pieces here, you're going to have two LEDs per inch that's on there. Because people have problems soldering leads for wiring this, I have it already made in preset lengths. And we have it in the 1-inch strips with the Kynar wire leads already put on. There are 6 1-inch pieces in the bag, and I have them also in 2-inch, 4-inch, and 6-inch segments, so that if you want to set these up in the individual rooms, you have pre-cut ones with leads that makes it a lot easier for you to work with. Another place where I use these is in wiring or lighting the inside of kitchen cabinets, and that really is a nice touch for kitchen cabinets to have lighting on the inside. It also comes in a full reel, and that's what I use most of the time when I'm working on the dollhouses is the reel, and then I cut it to whatever dimension that I want. You can cut it every place. There's a section of copper on here. You can cut it and then solder leads to that place, and we're going to do that and show you in just a second. I've got my dollhouse here. And we want to put a strip of LEDs up at the top here so that it'll illuminate that entire room. Now, I actually have put some LEDs on the side so you can see with the video of what I'm going to be doing in the room itself. But a lot of times there is a molding strip that is put on the facing of the plywood for all of the rooms. In the case of this one, I actually have 1/8 of an inch drop on the back side here. So you can take a section of my LEDs and put them right into that groove up there, and it completely disappears. So it's real easy to establish or set these in for illuminating the entire box. If it is flush on that edge, and you have the rough plywood edge, I recommend that you take just regular molding pieces and go ahead and glue them on here to give you that extra lip, and that helps an awful lot in the design. It cleans up the edges and it looks pretty nice. But if it is perfectly flush, then I buy the 1/8 inch square stock, and I'll set it in here, mark it, and cut it to length so that I can then glue it directly on that top section with my LEDs already mounted on the back here. If we have the ability to work with the stick, it actually is easier because I can do all of my work on the table and not have to be wiring directly up onto the top side here. In this situation, I would go ahead and determine how much I need for LEDs, and depending on the depth that you have on the room, you don't really need to have LEDs all the way across. These are quite bright, and I would probably go with a section about like so. Because we have the extra depth on this side, I actually would probably put this a little bit off center so that it would be stationed about there, cut it at this set here, and then we'll apply it with the double stick tape on the back side when we're done and run our wires to be able to connect it up. So let me go ahead and cut a section off of here. And I have one sitting on the table that I cut earlier. So we're going to use this particular section here, and we're going to take it to the desktop then and get it set for wiring into the dollhouse later. I'm going to take the strip that we just cut, and I'm going to set it down here and take a piece of Scotch tape just to hold it in place. I've mentioned this before, but I always work on a block of wood, and when I have my own blocks of wood here, one side I have sandpaper that I've glued onto here for a lot of applications where you need to scuff up the surface for gluing something. I like to have that sandpaper on the one side, but this side I use for all of my soldering, and it just makes it a lot easier instead of working directly on the table itself. We've put the wire now, or the LED ribbon, I've put the Scotch tape down here to hold it into place. I'm going to take my soldering iron and I'm going to apply a little bit of solder to each of these two copper strips that are where we cut it off of the full reel. So you can see that I've put just a little bit of solder directly on there. I then am going to take a length of wire and I'm going to figure out how much that I need. I know that I'm going to be running across the top here to the edge of the LED strip, and I'm going to choose to come down this outside wall and connect the wires underneath the dollhouse. So I need to just figure out how long I need to go. Come down here, and then we'll give it another foot to be able to connect it to the electric underneath, or what I call the basement of the dollhouse. I'm going to take my two wires and I'm going to strip about 1/4 of an inch on each of these. Oop. And I really only need a small amount, so I'm going to take my cutters and come back to about 1/8 of an inch. So they both have about 1/8 of an inch of exposed bare wire. Again, this is my Kynar wire, which is silver plated so that it has better electrical connection. If you notice, and you may not be able to see it, but there is a little plus on the left side of my tape here. So the left terminal is positive. There's a negative sign right here. So the right side, to me, is the negative, or the ground of the connection. I'll then take my soldering iron. I'll apply a little bit of solder to the tip, and I'm going to set the wire directly onto that little puddle of solder that we previously put on here and melt it right into the top. Oops, there we go. And we'll take the black, go to the right side. I'll hold it down a little bit better there and come right on top of it and melt it into that puddle. And we're all set. The other thing that I like to do is I like to take our liquid tape and coat those two little solder points that are on here to give me a little bit stronger connection where we soldered the wires in there. It is a rubber-based paint, I guess, and it just kind of locks those wires in there. It takes a few minutes for that to dry, and I can show you where that has dried on there, and it gives me stability of where the wires are actually soldered on. It makes a little bit stronger connection, and I don't worry about pulling them out. I now have this thing ready that I could go ahead and put it in there, and as I said, I want to run it down to the basement. So I need to put a channel into this area. And what I have done is I earlier pulled the strip that was on here off so that I'd have exposure to the plywood that's underneath. I then can take a grinder bit. This is a fishtail grinder. And I can put a little channel into the edge of the plywood. So I'll start at the top. And we'll just run that all the way down to the basement. The second thing that I need to do is my wires are going to be coming from here, so I'm going to take my drill and drill a hole at an angle straight up so it comes behind this molding strip that's on here, and I can feed my wire then on the back side. We'll run it all the way down this channel, and a second hole all the way at the bottom where I can run it down into the basement of the dollhouse. Now I can come back with my ribbon. I'll take the backing off of the ribbon. And I'm going to line it up on the back side here. Let me mention one other thing is if we were using the stick, it is a lot easier to be able to do all of this directly on the tabletop where I can line it up directly onto the center of the stick here and then glue the stick into place. But since we already had a ledge on the dollhouse, I'm just going to go ahead and use that little bit of a ledge, and I'm going to eyeball where I want it and just stick it nice and tight all the way in. Now I can take my wires and feed them through the hole that we drilled. They'll come out of here. And they're going to follow all the way down. And I'll stick them into the hole down here. Now, if this was the only wire run that we were going to have down here, we could go ahead then and glue the molding strip back over there. I like to put a couple little drops of glue into this routed channel just to hold this into place, and then come back later on and put our strip in there. But we may have another one if we're putting LEDs on this side. We can bring them down also into here. We could also solder to this strip that's here to energize that strip to tie them together. But this is basically all that I need to do to get this in. And of course I'm going to glue this little bit of wire up into here so that you don't see it at all. The next thing that I like to do is I like to put a switch into the circuit so that I can turn the LEDs on separate from the incandescent lights that you'd be running into the dollhouse. And what I've done there is I've drilled 2 holes. I've drilled 2 holes down here where I can mount this switch, and I would glue that into place. But what we need to do is to solder wires on the 2 edges that's on here, which I have done previously, and they would be of course red because we switched the hot side or the positive side of the LED leads that we have coming off of there to the switch. And then I'm just going to take the 2 wires and push them in here, and they're going to go into the basement again. And I'll put a little bit of glue and set those right into here, and then I can glue that into place, and that gives us our switch that's going to turn the lights on and off. They're both red leads that are on here, so the red that we had going into the basement from our LED strip, the one red wire is going to come over here to one of these red wires that are on the switch. The second one will continue and connect to the positive side of the power underneath the dollhouse. And we'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back and we'll show you how all of this works. Having taken a few minutes to clean up the dollhouse and to wire all of the wiring to the basement as we talked about, I can now show you what we've accomplished. I went ahead and turned off the LEDs that we had in that room so we could film what we were doing in the room. And we have basically the electricity is in the room now, and we have the incandescent lamp that we've lit in there. I can go down to the switch down on the base of the dollhouse that we installed, and I can hit it, and then we can turn on all of the lights in there. I went ahead and wired another string on this side to complement this, and I did leave this off so that I could show you that I brought the wires from this LED strip into our channel that we had cut previously, and I soldered the black to black and the red to red coming from this one to the lines that came from this set of LEDs. With that all done, I put a couple of drops of glue in the channel and smooth this down so that you can come back and then glue this back in place, and you've covered up all of your wiring and everything looks exactly the way that it should. Let me show you again. I'll turn off the LEDs, and let me turn off the light that I have in the background for doing the videos and give you a real look at how much the LEDs do in illuminating the individual rooms. Again, I have just the incandescent light lit there, and I'm going to go down and hit the button, turn on the LEDs, and we get a nice even lighting of the entire room on each side of there. And of course, the next thing we would want to do is go ahead and put LEDs down on the first floor. That's as easy as it is, and one thing that I tend to do on almost all of the dollhouses that I light is to put in the 1/8 inch ribbon LEDs.